to a 2018 article written on psychguides.com, the World Health Organization approximates that 300 million people in the world suffer from depression, and about 15 million of those people are in the United States. It's important to listen to the following information because if you or someone you know has depression, you can use these tips to your advantage to learn about it and to help them. Understanding the causes, effects, symptoms, and the ways to help people with depression could greatly impact their lives or even save it. I have a few friends that actually suffer from depression, so I've done research in the past and research specifically for this speech so that I could help them and to inform you guys of what depression is. First, I will identify the causes of depression, then the effects will be explained. After that, I will describe the symptoms, and then I will discuss a few ways to help someone and a few ways that won't. So, understanding the causes, effects, symptoms, and the ways to help someone with depression greatly impacts your lives or even save it. Stated by Schmolfning in 2018, 9 most causes of depression on the website verywellmind.com. Grief, stress, and physical illness are 3 of those causes. When you lose someone that you love, you will go through the stages of grief, and you'll feel sad, and you'll feel a lot of different emotions, and that's totally normal, but if those symptoms worsen, that can lead to depression. When you have stress that overwhelms the person's ability to cope, and you have high cortisol levels in your brain, and that negatively affects the neurotransmitter serotonin, which contributes to depression. Not only that, but physical illnesses, you have the stress from having a physical illness, but some physical illnesses actually cause depression, whether it's endocrine, neurologic, infectious, or vitamin deficiencies. Now that I have identified the causes of depression, I will explain some of the effects. Timberline Knowles' 2018 article, What are the Effects of Depression?, published on timberlineknowles.com, discussed a few of these effects, and the most fatal being suicide. Now, you can have suicidal thoughts, you could even plan your suicide, but if it goes all the way to committing, that's obviously the most fatal. And that's the most dangerous one, and if someone has depression and you're very worried about this, you want to call a suicide helpline or even 911. When you also have depression, you have behavioral or cognitive changes, and that causes conflicts within your relationships because you're not acting the same way that you normally do, and people are like, well, why are you acting weird, and why are you being so irritable lately, and that causes issues. You also have the high probability of other disorders developing, whether it's anorexia, bulimia, anxiety disorders, or OCD, because you have a chemical imbalance in your brain that's affecting you to have depression, and that also leads to those other disorders. And some of the symptoms of those other disorders lead and correlate to depression. So like when you have anorexia, you're usually more down and sad and have fatigue, and that's another symptom of depression, which we're about to talk about since I just explained the effects of depression. So it's much more than just being sad. There's multiple different moods, and some of these moods include anxiety, a sense of hopelessness, that I don't know or I don't care feeling, and obviously being sad. But it's not just about being sad. It's so much more than just these I showed you. And you can also have mood swings, and you can be feeling anxious one second and then all of a sudden you're feeling hopeless. You could be happy one second and then all of a sudden you're feeling sad. It's so much more than people think. They think, oh, you're just being a Debbie Downer. No, it's just what happens when you have depression because of that chemical imbalance. And Mayo Clinic staff's article 2018, Depression, Major Depressive Disorders, highlighted on the idea that there's behavior and cognitive changes that I mentioned earlier. And some of these changes could be bad thoughts, which lead to the effect of suicide, isolation, when you don't want to be around people or do normal activities that you do, or being irritable or being agitated all the time. Another thing would be having fatigue or appetite changes. Some people stay normal with the way they eat, and some people have, they starve or they binge, and neither of those are healthy, and it mentally drains you, causing fatigue. Now that I have described the symptoms of depression, I will now discuss a few ways to help, and some ways that don't help. So Smith, Barson, and Siegel explained that being a compassionate listener is one of the most key ways you can help someone. If you just show that you understand them, you support them, and that you care for them, and you're always there for them, they will feel that they can trust you, and they will feel that someone actually is there for them. They won't feel as alone or worthless like they do. And you don't want the conversation to revolve around you because then they're not going to feel like they matter and that their feelings matter. A way that's not going to help someone is to get over it phrases, which would be, your life isn't as bad as somebody else's, or you're always a Debbie Downer and you're always being negative, I don't want to hang around you. You don't want to push them away. That's another bad thing to do, because then they're going to feel that they don't matter and they're going to get worse with their depression. So first I identified the causes of depression, then the effects were explained, third, the symptoms were described, fourth, I discussed some of the ways to help and ways that don't. Understanding the causes, the effects, the symptoms, and ways to help someone with depression can greatly impact someone's life or even save it. And after hearing all of this, you should be able to retain all of this information to be able to help someone or even yourself if you have depression, and understand that it's much more than just being sad all the time. It's emotional, physical, and mental drainage all the time. If you or someone you know has depression, I suggest that you use these tips to your advantage. And if you're extremely worried, call a helpline or a professional, because you may just save a life.